Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah? All right. Oh, got some students in the back. They know the schedule. Okay. So my name's Professor Lee. I'm an instructor at the Shidler College of Business. Let me just get my timer up so I don't take up too much time. Okay. So it's 4:30 in the afternoon. There's a lot of other places you'd rather be. I appreciate that you're here. So I'm going to ask a question, and you're going to respond yes as hard as you can, okay? So here we go. Are you ready to change your financial future?
Yes.
Pretty good. That was pretty good. We'll do it one more time. Just like, okay? Are you ready to change your financial future?
Yes.
Good. All right. So here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to try and make this as specific and helpful, as actionable as possible. It'll be a minimum of like theory and all of that good stuff, okay? I want to get you folks as much tools as quickly as possible and as effectively as possible to get you on your way here. So I'll do a quick introduction, and then we're going to cover 3 money moves, just like this little section here in the slides say. So what I'm going to do is just a show of hands. I'm not going to call on anybody. This is strictly for polling purposes. Here's the question for you. How many of you have ever been surprised by a hidden expense like a car repair or lost phone? Raise your hand. I'm not going to call on anybody. I just want to see. Okay, so a lot of you. So thankfully, we will talk about that in the first money move, mastering your cash flow. Second question. How many of you have checked your credit score in the last 6 months? Okay, pretty good. So we'll talk more about credit and your credit score here, money move 2. Oh, lastly, this one is a little more technical. How many of you have heard of or know what a company retirement plan match is? Raise your hand. Very good, okay. So money move 3, we're going to talk about your first job and first paycheck. How do we think about saving for retirement and all of that once we are in the workforce? I know many of you are not technically in the workforce in your career yet, but you want to get ready for this type of stuff. Sooner the better. I do see some people who came to see my presentation last semester that I did for this. So while the topic may be the same, this isn't wasted time for those of you who have been here and seen my presentation before. Because remember, a lot of learning happens, especially with kind of technical stuff like this. It takes a little bit of repetition. And I promise you, you're going to pick up more stuff than you did the last time. So it's still very, very helpful. Okay, and then we'll do a summary at the end here. Okay, so let's put this into some kind of context. So Hawaii is notorious for being one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive state to live in. So I wanted to just give us some context here. I chose Nevada because for a lot of local people in Hawaii, that's the state you go to when it's too expensive to live here anymore. In fact, that happened to my family. My brother moved to Vegas because it was just too expensive here. So let's look at some of these numbers. Talking about food. Okay, so to put this into some kind of percentage, it's 24% higher to buy food, to literally feed ourselves, than it would be in Nevada. And Nevada's it's a fairly moderate cost of living state, meaning it's not the cheapest, it's not the most expensive. 24% more expensive. And let's look at housing. Of course, we know housing's gonna be crazy, right? But to put that in perspective, it's 31% more expensive here, just to live here. Okay, to physically have a roof over our head. So we've got a daunting task on our hands. It doesn't mean that we give up, right? There's a lot of beautiful, wonderful things about living here, but that's why I'm glad you folks are here, because this is how we allow ourselves to live here, or if there's other places you're from or want to live in that are expensive. Okay, so here is what I want to do. Real quick poll here. On this side, it's blank. I'm going to show you something called a living wage shortly, but I just want to make sure we're clear on what that means. So this, you can see this here in the bottom corner. So really fascinating study. MIT has this long-range study called the Living Wage Study. They factor in, okay, in every state across the country, they factor in, okay, how much is an hourly wage if you want to have a living wage, meaning I have enough to feed and clothe myself or my loved ones, so I pay for all my basic expenses. I have enough, a little bit to have some fun, and I can save for retirement, all the things you're supposed to do, okay? And then they break it down to an hourly wage. So I'm just gonna do a poll, right? Just raise your hands for a poll. I'm not gonna call on anybody. Who here thinks an hourly living wage in Hawaii is $20 an hour? Okay. Who here thinks it's $25 an hour? Okay, a few people. What about $30 an hour? More people. Okay, let me show you. It's about 30 bucks. 30 bucks an hour. To put this in perspective, minimum wage in Hawaii is 14. So it's more than double. It costs more than double the minimum wage to have a livable wage. Okay, that doesn't mean you're balling, right? That just means, can I have a quality of life where I'm not eating cat food every month? So, again, this is not to depress you or make you give up. It's just, we want to make sure we care about our future, we're being responsible about our money, and hopefully some of the strategies we're going to cover in this session is going to help you get there. Okay. So I want to talk about this first before we get into the nitty-gritty here. So for those of you who are in my personal financial planning class, Finance 301, you already are rolling your eyes because I say this all the time, but this is absolutely true. When we talk about personal financial planning, personal finances, it's never just about the money. It's never just about the numbers. It's also equally as important to think about the emotions and your behaviors tied to that money. Because money is not just money. Money is emotion, okay? So what I mean by that is, I could give you the most perfect comprehensive plan, perfectly designed for you, which I used to do before I went back to get my PhD. And people paid me a lot of money to do that. But it doesn't matter how beautiful and perfect this plan is if your behaviors directly prevent that plan from being implemented, okay? And it's not a judgment call. We all have what's called these cognitive biases. That's just how we're designed that way, okay? So it's not about judging it. It's not about making them the bad guy. You just want to make sure you're aware and respect the fact that sometimes we have to, not sometimes, we have to take into account emotions, okay? So one example of that, this is when I was an advisor. This is a nice problem to have. So I had a high net worth client. She was she had a lot of money, and she grew up, she didn't grow up in the Depression, but her parents did. So we're talking destitute, absolute destitution. Like, she grew up in this mindset of, I need to hoard everything I have. And I would beg her to diversify. All she did was hold cash. And so in a properly diversified plan, you want a little bit of cash, you want a little bit of long-term investments, you want a little bit of everything. All she wanted was cash, which therefore means she's losing money because of inflation, okay? And I begged her, every time I'd meet with her, she'd only let me invest a little bit. And that's a very extreme version, but we all have that emotional bias, right? So you just want to make sure you're aware of that. Okay, so here is our first money move. I made it the first one because it's kind of the foundation. If you don't have your cash flow in order, everything else is kind of hard to do, hard to manage, okay? So what I mean by that is, if at the end of every month, you don't have any more money left because you spent it, that's a cash flow issue, okay? So what happens is, especially in an expensive place to live in like Hawaii, you might be what they call asset rich, meaning you have $1 million home, but you might be cash flow poor, meaning after your mortgage, after your car payments, maybe you have kids and you send them to a private school, or maybe they're helping you with college tuition, there really isn't much left at the end of the month. So that's the first thing you want to kind of think about. So for many of you, you're students, so you don't really have too much in the way of assets yet. But it doesn't matter. You still want to have these good habits when we talk about managing your cash flow. So here is the guideline. I like this as a way to just say, how do we think about the money that's coming in? So what this means is it doesn't matter if you have a regular job, or maybe your parents are still helping you, so they gave you some money, or maybe they already help you with some of the needs here. It doesn't matter. Whatever money you get, or maybe you're an athlete, so maybe you get some money that way. It doesn't matter. Whatever inflow you get, whatever money you get, income you get. Let's say you get $100 in a month. Only 50 of it should be going to needs, which is kind of rough, right? $50 doesn't go far if you have to do all of this stuff. But that's just for an example. $30 goes to fun stuff. $20 goes to your future. So let's take that $100 example. What I don't want you to think is, well, if I only got $20 and most of it, let's say, is going to a savings fund. Let's say of the $20, $15 goes to a savings fund, $5 goes to investing. That's not much, right? I don't want you to think that, though. Any amount, there really is no such thing as too little that you should just give up. The worst thing you can do is not do anything at all, especially nowadays when we talk about investing and savings accounts and that type of thing. The friction to do some of that stuff is minimal, meaning I think for most accounts, the minimum to open an account is zero. Zero. You can just open an account. And even better, especially when we talk about investing like stocks and bonds and ETFs and stuff like that, there's no trading costs. So there's no such thing as too little. Okay, I want to just make sure we emphasize this. So something like this is helpful. It's a guideline to kind of walk you through, well, how do I plan the money that does come in? So I'm not just like blowing it all, right? So would I like for all of you to stick to this religiously? I mean, yes. Realistically, though, it can change from month to month. It could change from week to week. And it's tricky if you're not working yet, right? Maybe you get money incrementally. But my takeaway message here is, whatever money you bring in, I want you to think about these three, let's call them buckets, right? Think about, okay, I've got some needs. I want to spend a little bit for fun, but I also want to put to my future, okay? It doesn't have to be, for instance, all of this, because maybe for now, all you have is enough to do an emergency fund. Great, do that, okay, do that. So how do we do this? What is the best way to kind of set ourselves up for success? So I'm going to keep that's our little guide up there. So automation is the magic word. Automation is our magic tool in this case. Because just as far as I know, I've taken a look at a lot of different apps for the phone when it comes to this type of stuff for like banking and investing. All of them now allow you to automatically move money and to do it regularly. They all do it. So use that feature. The last thing you want to do is be manually doing this, every month or every week or whatever the case may be. Set it up, and what will happen is you'll just forget, which is good. You want to forget about that stuff, right? Because then you won't realize the pain of not being able to spend that money on something fun. So automate. Here is the priority. For most of you, you probably don't have an emergency fund, okay? If you do, great. I'll tell you how much is a good number for you folks. But that's your first order of business, is to save for an emergency fund. And then if you've got any long-term debt that you're carrying, you want to take care of that debt. Okay, so if you have like a car payment, that's a little bit different, right? Car payment, you just make sure you keep paying it on time. But I mean, like, if you've got any credit card debt or anything like that, you want to take care of that debt next. And then lastly, if you've got your emergency fund, you're not carrying any, debt, crazy debt, then we can start retirement and investing. That would be my suggestion. Now, however, if you are like dead set on investing and starting that retirement fund, perfectly fine. Remember, we want to work with your psychology. You want to work with your emotions. So if you're like, I really want to do this with the retirement account, great. Start there. Okay, this is just a guideline. This is just a guideline. In the sense of a lot of the times when students talk to me, they don't know where to start. So this is just the suggested start. But if you're like, I want to get that retirement plan going, or I want to get that investment account going, great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about these emotional cognitive blind spots. The reason why I'm so big on automation is because we are taking advantage of a cognitive bias that has to do with momentum. We as human beings are really, really susceptible to positive and negative momentum. So this is an example. You'll notice most services now are moving towards a subscription model where you sign up and you're automatically billed every month and you have to opt out. That's not a secret. That's not a surprise. They're taking advantage of the fact that our brains are not good with that kind of stuff. We forget, we don't prioritize it. So even if we hate this service, we'll keep paying it because the momentum is moving towards just letting it roll, right? Keep paying it. And a lot of these kind of more scummy services make it super hard to cancel, right? So even more so, you're like, I don't want to do it right now. They're taking advantage of a cognitive bias, momentum. So let's use that bias to our advantage. Let's automate everything so we forget we're paying ourselves for our future selves, let's say, okay? Because what happens is, it might hurt in the beginning because you're like, man, I could really use that, let's say $100 a month to go have fun. But you actually forget. I know it sounds crazy, but you do. You just literally forget. And it's just something like our brains get used to things, for better or worse, right? Our brains just get used to things. So let's use that to our advantage to pay future us. Okay, I'm going to talk about this again in Money Move 3, but here's my suggestion. We're in the wild, wild west right now with financial services online. It is crazy out there. Be very, very careful. It is so crazy. There are websites now that say they are FDIC insured, and they are not, and it's legal, okay? It is nuts out there. So stick to boring. Schwab, Vanguard, Fidelity, or if you're talking about local companies, First Hawaiian. It's not that they're not the best, they're just the most reliable. Investing shouldn't be fun or sexy, honestly. It really should be just something you do, and you just let it ride. Okay, stick to boring. Stick to boring, stick to providers that have been around a long time. Okay, so let's think about a budget scenario. So I have two here. I have two little scenarios. So a lot of students right now, they have the opportunity to save some money because they're still either living with parents or parents are helping subsidize their living situation while they go to school, okay? Some of you might be more on your own, and this would reflect that. So the assumption here is this is the spending breakdown. If we're doing $1,000 a month, take home, not what you gross, what you take home, and you're working 20 hours a week, which is like a part-time job, okay? So let's just talk this through a little bit. We're not gonna go through every single thing. Here's what I want you to notice. The black here, this is rent. So this is about the median rent in let's say, urban Honolulu. I think this was for three roommates, so that's their share. Okay, notice, this is assuming you give $100 as a courtesy to your parents. Some of you don't, okay? So even better. So what I want you to then look at is the little beige section. That's for savings if you're on your own. Here's the savings pie if you do have some help. It's a very big difference, okay? So I'll talk to both audiences, right? People who are lucky enough to have parents helping them out, and those of you who are kind of more on your own, because my recommendations, they're still the same, but let's just talk about this. So still thinking about this scenario of how do we save for that emergency savings? The target here for you folks is $1,000. Now, in proper financial planning, what they tell you is you should have 3 to 6 months of expenses in emergency savings. That's kind of a lot, especially if you're a young person. So let's have our target be $1,000. Here's why. I know that seems like a lot of money, but that is, maybe you have an animal and you got to go help pay for, care, or maybe you get a flat tire, or maybe there's some jerky professor who told you have to get an expensive, textbook or something. That's not me. But you never know, right? So you want to have something where you're like, it sucks that this happened, but at least I've got some emergency savings. Before I tell you kind of the breakdown, this is something you're just going to have to trust me on if you've never experienced this. You don't know how cognitively taxing and exhausting it is to have the anxiety of not having enough financially. And then the payoff is huge if you go on the other side and now you have some savings. This is just something you're just gonna have to trust me on. As somebody who in my early 20s, I had helped a friend out in the business, and that was one of the worst decisions I ever did because I lost a ton of money and I was struggling. And then I was able to come back from it, and I have now, like a proper adult, I have emergency savings and all that good stuff. The emotional load that I let go of after that, when I took care of that, it is night and day, okay? It is so pervasive, that anxiety, that fear, it's gonna just invade everything about your life and make you miserable. So I don't want that for you folks. So let's talk about this. How long would it take to save $1,000? In this scenario, remember the assumptions were $1,000 a month take home from 20 hours of part-time work. If you're getting help from your parents, very doable. You can get that in about 3 months, okay? 3 months. Versus if you're doing this on your own, it might take a little bit more time. Takeaway message for you folks who are doing it on your own though. This doesn't mean you give up, right? Remember, even a little bit helps. The worst thing you can do is nothing. So if it takes a year and a half, it takes a year and a half. But you're doing this on your own, and that's to be commended, right? This is like living in Hawaii on your own. That's like hard mode for sure, okay? So I give you a lot of respect for that. But the takeaway message here, if you're getting some help from your parents, make this a priority. While you have that luxury of this safety net, so to speak, of your parents, start saving for yourself, okay? Start saving for yourself. And for my gang that are doing this on their own, it's a little harder. Admittedly, it's a little harder, but you can still do it. And you deserve to do that for yourself. That's what's important as well, okay? To have that emergency fund. One way to think about an emergency fund is this cushions you from a lot of suffering and stress, okay? This is a way to minimize suffering and stress in your life. Okay, so a couple things that you can do in the near future, I highly suggest you folks do in the near future for this topic, is if you have not done so already, open a savings account. So this is different than a checking account, right? Thankfully, nowadays, we have a lot of great products out there where there's high yield savings accounts. So you wanna stick to those if you can. And remember, you wanna go with tried and true, boring companies. So this is a website here. I'm a fan of the content creator who runs this website. His name is Ramit Sethi. He's been around forever. I know the name of the website's kind of sleazy. It's not though, it's very reputable. He's been around forever. But he normally upkeeps a website or part of his blog where he maintains the best savings account for today, for right now. So the second thing you do once you have your savings account, set something up so you automatically send money regularly and you don't even have to pay attention to it, okay? Okay, so we have an action break here. I know you might be bored listening to me, so I want you to bring out your phone, and if you don't have your bank's app on your phone, download it. Like, do it right now. I'm gonna give you folks some time to do this. If you already have your bank's app on your phone, great. Try and find out. You don't have to open a savings account now. go on your phone, look up if your bank, what is the savings account situation like, right? Do they have a high yield savings account? What is it like? And find out what information is needed to open it. You don't have to open it now. My suggestion, if you have no banking options, so credit unions are great. The reason why credit unions are normally better than regular banks is because they're not for profit. So they're not driven by fees as much. Okay, so we all have the privilege of, since we're all affiliated with UH, we have the UH Federal Credit Union. And what's nice about UH Federal Credit Union, there's a location right at Campus Center, in case that's ever something you need. These two are also very, very reputable. Marcus Savings is Goldman Sachs. That's their banking feature. Okay, so I'll give you, there's about 5 more minutes. Actually, we have about 8 more minutes. So take this time now, try this out, okay? If you need some help, let me know, but you owe it to yourself to try this, okay? So again, you don't have to open the savings account now, but you should go ahead and make sure you know, well, what is out there as an option, okay? Yes?
I have a question. What's your opinion between a high yield savings account and a Roth IRA?
Oh, okay, so the question is, what about high yield savings versus Roth IRA? Good question. So actually, they do 2 different things. So you should think about them for 2 different strategies. So Roth IRA, you want to think long-term because that's for retirement. Both are important, right? But that's for long-term money because you can't technically touch that till you're, what is it now, 60, I think they upped it, yeah, to, no, 59 and a half. I think is it 62? Don't quote me on the age. You have to be an old fart, though, to access it without penalties. So high yield savings is for liquid money, or one way to think about that is maybe you have a short-term savings plan for maybe you want to take a trip or for emergency. It's always just going to stay liquid, and you're going to need it as you need it. Yeah, but good question. Okay. We have a few more minutes, and then I'll keep moving.
Once their faces is coming here. Don't like that joke. The white guy. Does soccer like parties and things. The one who hosted for the years. Oh shit. Yeah, it's Shay and his brother. No, Shay and his girl. For a couple years. Yeah.
I'm staying in our room.
They're next to our room? Oh shit, you didn't know about that?
No.
Shay and
Okay, so that was money move number 1. Now we're going to move on to money move number 2, building credit safely. So really what I'm talking about is building credit safely so that we improve what's called our credit score, or otherwise known as our FICO score. So one thing, how you want to think about this is your credit score is kind of like your financial GPA, and it's used for a shockingly large amount of things. Okay, so the name of the game for us is make that score as high as we can. The higher, the better. The higher, the better, okay? So here is the ranges. Here are the ranges, let's say. My goal for you folks, 700. No lower than 700, okay? It's really hard to get over here. The higher you get, the easier life is. Meaning, things are given to you because you're proving to the FICO company, which is Fair Isaac Credit something. I can't remember what the O stands for. But anyway, the higher your score, basically the more reliable you are, right? So what that means, conversely, the lower your score, unfortunately, the harder life gets for you. And it gets rough, okay? It gets really rough. So much so, and this is going to sound crazy, but this is the world we live in, it's actually much more expensive to have a low credit score. then it is a higher credit score. You get charged the most for everything, okay? You get down to this level, sometimes you're just locked out of opportunities altogether, meaning you can't get certain loans. For a car, certainly for a home, you're just locked out completely, okay? We don't want to get there. So our goal here, 700, okay? That's the magic number for us. We'll talk more about what is the pain of credit scores. Yes, question in back?
I wonder what you could do to raise your credit score, and if you were as an authorized user and somebody stopped paying their bills, what should you do?
Okay, so we're actually going to talk about how to raise the score for you folks. And then you said the second part of your question was, what if you are the authorized user and the other person's not paying?
Yeah, like you're out as a minor and your parents stopped paying their bills.
Very good question. So if you're the minor and you're an authorized user, okay. I would need to double check on that, but if you're an adult, I think, if you're an authorized user though, you know what? I think it doesn't affect your credit. I need to double check though, because whenever I've looked into those types of things, I've never actually done one for myself or any of the people I know, but when I've looked into it for clients, I believe it was still tied to the original cardholder's credit. But since you're in my class, I will get back to you on that, because now that's piquing my interest. Okay, that's an excellent question. So let's just be clear here. Let me just do a quick poll. How many of you have a credit card of your own? Okay. Great. How many of you are an authorized user and on your parents? Okay, so that's normally the mix. So just so we're clear, it's not free money, yeah? So if we run a charge, we have to pay it back. So thankfully, nowadays, because credit cards are so ubiquitous, people know about them, use them a lot, this is no longer such a big issue. But I will tell you, even as early as 10 years ago, that was still an issue where people didn't realize you have to pay this back. You have a loan. Like a credit card is a loan. It's not free money. So I just want to make sure we're clear, right? A credit card is not free money. The second you use it, you owe somebody money, okay, to pay that back. Okay, so how to think about your credit card. In a perfect world, this credit card would be used for emergencies and for planned purchases that you're going to pay off and not carry a balance, okay? In a perfect world. I say that because Hawaii is expensive, and so there's a lot of people who live on credit cards. So I just want to be cognizant of that. But let's talk about consequences for credit scores and why they matter so much, because they do. Okay, so I know there's a lot of data here. Let's just focus on car, because for a lot of us, this is kind of probably the more relevant versus a home. So let's think about this here. Let's say we're going to get a car loan for $40,000, okay? $40,000 loan. If I have great credit, my loan rate is 5%. And so just like it says there, I pay about $5,300 in interest for this loan. Okay, $5,300 for this interest. Let's contrast that to somebody with a bad car loan. $16,000. Okay, $16,000. So let's just make some round numbers here. So that's about $11,000 more for nothing. This is money you pay just because you need a car. $11,000. I know that's a lot, but I want you to think about this right now. Imagine in your mind, if I just walked up to you and gave you $11,000 right now, what would you buy with it? That'd be awesome, right? $11,000. You do not want to be here, okay? You don't want to be here. That's real money you have to pay for something in a lot of places you need, right? Thankfully in Hawaii, there is a decent transit system, but there's a lot of places like in LA, good luck, you need a car, right? So, takeaway message here, no matter if you're talking about a home, a car loan, or a credit card, The lower your credit score, the higher the interest rate is for you. Meaning, the more expensive it is to live this life. Bottom line. And that sucks. Because people, not everybody who has low credit, but a lot of people who have low credit, it's because they don't have a lot of money, right? For whatever the reason is, and that's not a judgment. But this is the world we live in, that unfortunately, it can, if you're in this world right here of poor to bad credit, it just is not a fun place to be, okay? So you folks are young, you folks are eager and smart. We want to try and get up here for our credit.
Professor Lee?
Yes.
Question. So if someone pays their credit card on time, what are the factors that decrease the credit score and how can it be raised?
Okay, very good. So the question was, if you pay on time, what factors make your credit score go up? Yeah? That's pretty much the question? Okay, so we're actually going to talk about some of those. Not the next slide, but the slide after that. So hopefully that'll answer some of your questions. But before we get to how do we do this, what are the tactics to do this, let's just be clear. And actually, this is leading into making sure you increase your score. Let's talk about the credit trap. Okay, this is what you do not want to do. Never, ever, ever just pay the minimum. This is a scam. The credit card company is not your friend. The credit card company wants you to carry a balance forever because that's how they make money. So you might have this crazy balance. Maybe you have like a $30,000 bill and the minimum payment might be $300. Or maybe you have only, let's say, $5,000. Not only $5,000, but let's say $5,000 and they go, oh, it's $30. Do not listen to that. If you keep to that minimum, you'll be paying that forever. They do not want you to pay it off. You have to pay more than the minimum, okay? Now, of course, I would love you to not carry a balance month to month. We'll talk about that. But if you have a balance, this is the trap. It is a purposeful trap. The credit card company wants to trap you into carrying the balance for as long as they can, okay? So don't pay just the minimum. That alone will help your credit score. The longer you keep a balance, the lower your credit score gets. So that's one little tip on here. But let's keep going with this idea of making sure we understand this credit trap. Let's just focus here, okay? Let's just focus here. So we have this balance of about $6,000. If we just keep paying the minimum, look how much interest is paid versus if we just doubled the minimum payment. Okay, versus if we paid the minimum payment plus 100. Look how different that finance charges are. That's why the credit card company wants you to just do the minimum payment. That finance charge, that's the money they make. They're keeping that money, okay? So that's why you don't want to pay just the minimum. And to make matters worse, let's look at the time column. 14 years, okay, for a $6,000 balance. Versus, if we pay the minimum payment plus 100, 3.5 years. So both the time and the costs, you want to pay more than the minimum, okay? Even if it's $1 more, pay more than the minimum, okay? So let's talk now about how do we get that score up. Thankfully, it's relatively straightforward. First of all, one of the biggest ways to boost up your score is you pay off that card each month. You do not carry a monthly balance, okay? Or if you do carry a monthly balance, you keep it to within 3 to 6 months, but no long-term balances. That's going to destroy your credit score. So thankfully it might not be easy, but it is relatively straightforward. You don't have to do any kind of technical things. If you do carry a balance, maybe it's a large balance, you want to start chipping away at it. Just make sure you chip away at that balance. And please, for the love of God, never miss a payment, okay? Never, ever, ever miss a payment. Okay, so these are just 3 strategies There's a lot more. Like if you take my Finance 301 class, we talk a little bit more about that stuff. But let me just say a little bit more about other ways. So the FICO score, what it does is it's looking at these three things. This is the biggest activities it's looking for. The next thing is this concept of credit utilization. Credit utilization. Basically what that means is you get a higher credit score, better FICO score, if you have a lot of available credit, but you don't use all of it. You barely use any of it. So for instance, I might have 2 credit cards, but one of them, or both of them, combined has about $100,000 in available credit. Meaning between 2 credit cards, I could spend up to $100,000. But I only use $500 per month. The credit FICO score loves that, loves it. Because I only get a big available credit if I've shown in the past I can pay it off, right? They're not gonna give somebody with a low credit score more credit, or a lot of credit. It's gonna be very incremental. So I have a lot of available credit, but I only use a little bit on a regular basis. That's one way to think about credit utilization. So between these activities and credit utilization, that's about 60% of the FICO score in terms of boosting it up. The other emphasis is over time. So the longer you have a credit card, the better. That's why it is good that if you're a younger person, you actually, you do want your own credit card sooner than later if you are comfortable and responsible with it, because you want to establish your own credit score. Because in this world, you can't really do much without a credit score, unfortunately. Okay, so if you want more details about other kind of strategies for really boosting that credit score, you can shoot me an email or schedule something with me. But for now, this is great. You're covering a lot just by doing these 3, okay? Okay, and then in terms of what you can do going forward in the near future, if you don't have a credit card of your own yet, consider opening a credit card. And I say caution because you want to talk to your parents or talk to a loved one to just make sure it's a good fit for you. Because I don't know what your situation is, right? If you already have one credit card, this is a double caution, and you're very comfortable, you can think about 2 credit cards. Again, this is not for everybody. You want to be very, very careful. This is if you're a black belt at this stuff already, okay? So but that's something you'll have to decide for yourself. Action item, if you do carry a balance, it doesn't have to be a lot, but increase the amount you pay. It doesn't have to be a lot. Any amount higher than what you paid before is better than nothing, okay? And if possible, again, I know sometimes it's hard, especially in Hawaii, but if you can try to pay off your card at the end of the month and not carry a balance into the next month, that really is one of the best ways to increase that credit score. Okay, so here we got another activity. I want to spend some time. I want to give you folks time to do this because, again, how do you know if you have a good score yet? Now, some of you did look up your credit score, but it might have changed. It changes a lot for some people. So I checked both Experian and Equifax. If you establish a login, they'll give you your credit score, okay? Remember, the magic number for us is 700. But you don't know yet what you don't know until you get that score, okay? So again, you just want to Google Experian or Equifax. I checked. Both allow you to have a free FICO score. Some banks, or like I have American Express. American Express actually gives me my credit score, okay? So just remember though, the credit score is different than your credit report. The credit report, you are legally allowed to get one for free, but that's different. That is a report of all of your credit activity, which is good to have, but for now, we don't need that for this presentation. You're looking for the FICO score or the credit score, which is just going to be some 3-digit number, okay? So I want to give you folks time to try that out. So I'm going to give you some time now, If you have questions about that, let me know, but I highly suggest you try this out. There's really no excuse not to figure out what that score is for yourself. Okay? Yes?
Just in regards to having multiple credit cards. So what if I get like another credit card and I start using that one primarily, and then I don't really use my old credit card as much now. So will that affect my credit score in any way too?
Okay, yeah. So how this will work is there'll be a temporary dip in your credit score as you open that account. It's really temporary. It'll come back up. So what you want to do is, it's perfectly fine to use that new credit card as your primary card. You just want to make sure that every now and then you do a very small or reasonable transaction on the original card to keep it active. Because what will happen is, after a while, some credit card companies just close the account. And you don't want to close an existing credit card, because that actually drops your credit score. Because what happens is it negatively affects your utilization, because you're lowering the pool of available credit. Remember, the goal is we want tons of available credit, but we only use a teeny tiny amount. Okay, so you don't want to close existing credit cards. I would say the only time you would want to close an existing credit card is if you have what they call financial addiction, which is a legitimate thing, meaning you are prone to financial infidelity, you have a legitimate addiction to spending. Then obviously that might be something you want to, simplify your life that way. But that's a fairly extreme situation. Yeah.
How long does it take an unused card to close?
How long does it take an unused card to close? It's hard. It depends. I would imagine, though, nowadays, that's a hard one now. I would say maybe you're pushing it if it's over a year. But I'm guessing, because it's been a while since I've looked at the timelines. I would imagine they're shrinking, though, in terms of they're going to just close up the account. Yeah.
I'm doing this free check. Are you meant to put in the last 4 digits of your social security number?
Okay, so the question is, are you meant to put in the last 4 digits of your social security number? Yes, because it's tied to the social security number. Okay. So Experian and Equifax, they are the companies that kind of manage this stuff outside of the FICO website themselves. Good, fair question, though. Yes? Yes?
Oh, because I was like,
Yeah. Yes?
Sorry, going back to the utilization rate,
Yeah.
you did say that since when you close a card, it shrinks, right? So theoretically, if you have a 0%, you pay off all your cards, statements, and then you close a card, theoretically, would it not affect it as much as it would if you had, like, say a 10%?
Oh, okay. So it's not about the interest rate. It's not about the interest rate. It's about the amount of credit you can use. Yeah.
So I was like, so you know how like the utilization rate is based off of how much money is like on your balance versus your limit, right?
Versus the limit. Yeah. Balance versus limit.
Yeah,
Yes.
So I was saying like if you had like a balance rate or your bank statements are at 0,
Uh-huh.
it all off already, and then you close the card off, would it still affect your credit score?
Yeah. So it will no matter what.
No matter what.
The closing of an account means you drop the amount of available credit, so that will lower your credit score. Yeah. Is there another question? Yes.
Yeah, so I feel like young people have told me, even my sister had a hard time opening up a credit card.
Oh, okay.
She had no credits to begin with. Could you maybe share some tips around that?
Yes. So if you are somebody that's never opened a credit card before, what I have heard, because I haven't done any full research yet into it, but what I have heard is Capital One is one of the credit card companies that is actively trying to market to people with no credit and people with lower credit. They have that segment of their market, and then they also have a segment for their higher end, like travel, hackers and stuff like that. But Capital One, I think, is one company that has some generous options for people with little to no credit. Okay, yeah, it's a good question though. Yes.
Say like you get your first credit card, you theoretically have the option to choose whichever one you want. Is it better to go with like a more higher premier one or like a basic regular credit card?
Okay, so the question was, what if you have several cards? And one is a real basic one you first started with, and one is more of a higher end premier card. Which one do I use? So, if you have a good like system where you always pay off the balance every month, I would use the premier one, because normally the premier cards give you a lot of benefits. Points, you get concierge services. So like American Express, I have American Express, and if you are a platinum member, I am not a platinum card holder, but if you're a platinum card holder, I remember the rumor, was it platinum or was it Centurion? Let's say platinum. For a platinum charge card holder, they had a special concierge service. So like when Taylor Swift was doing her reunion tour and you couldn't get tickets, they had special tickets just for their platinum card holders, right? That's an extreme example. But if you have the discipline to pay off your monthly balance, use the premier card. Use the premier card.
I have a question. So like after you have several cards, one is premier and then the rest is like low tier cards. Should you close the low tier cards if you're not going to use them?
Okay, so the question is, well, what if I don't use these more basic cards, maybe the ones that you started out with? No, don't close any cards. So again, the only reason why you should close a card, in my opinion, is if you are struggling with like spending, like you have an addiction to spending, which is a very small segment of the population, because that for them, it's giving them the worst thing, right? But for everybody else, you actually want to keep your cards open. So like for myself, I have a starter card I got when I was in college, and I will put a small purchase on there like every quarter, and I just pay it off, just so it's still going. I don't close any cards. Okay, yeah. Yes?
If you don't charge things constantly to your account, will your utilization go down?
Okay, so if you don't charge things regularly, does it affect your utilization? So, technically, it does affect your utilization, but I guess, so in your case, you're saying you don't use it at all, or you use it just sporadically.
Yeah, like a very small, like what you're saying, just keep the account open, but that just shrinks the amount of overall.
Okay, yeah, so if you're just using it for a small purchase, like every quarter or so maybe I'll spend about 20 to 50 bucks. It's really minimal. It won't really negatively affect your utilization score. But it'll keep your card open, so in the long run, you're helping your utilization score, yeah. Okay, so did anybody have any trouble accessing their credit score? Anybody find their credit? I know some people found their credit score. Okay, so you don't tell me what your credit score is, but if we remember, you just want to know where you're at, so you know where you want to go. Yeah, know where you're at, so you know where you want to go, because you don't know where to go unless you know where you're at. Yeah. Okay. So remember, the magic score is 700. That's what we want. To give you an idea of the dynamic between my father and myself, we routinely call each other to see who has the higher credit score. And it's a perfectly healthy relationship. Okay, so let's do the last money move. First job, first paycheck. So I might be jumping the gun a little bit, because some of you are thinking, the last thing, I just want to graduate. I haven't even graduated yet. I'm not even going to think about my career. But there's no such thing as starting too late. So I see a lot of my current students and former students. You're probably going to roll your eyes at seeing this, but it's still a really, really great illustration. So we have this scenario here. Here are the assumptions. We have two investors. They're both in the stock market. We're going to assume they both have an 8% return, annual return. Here's the difference. Investor one starts at age 25. So every year, for 10 years, investor one puts in $5,000 of their own money. And then they stop at age 34. They stop putting money in at age 34, but they keep whatever money they put in, it's still investing, right? They just stop adding to it. Versus investor two. Investor two waits and doesn't start putting money in until age 35. They're the same age, by the way, okay? Age 35. So investor two waited and then started at age 35. Same amount, $5,000 each year, but investor two puts it in for 30 years and then stops. So at age 65, because even though investor one stopped at age 34, that money was still being invested, right? It's just that person didn't put more money in. So raise of hands. Remember, I'm not going to call on you, this is just a poll. Who thinks investor two is going to have more money at age 65? Who thinks investor one? Get out of here, it's all my students. You already know the answer. Okay, well, let's look at it though. Investor one blows investor two out of the water. Here's why. Timing matters. The longer you have money invested, the better. So it doesn't matter that investor one put in less money of her own, right? She only put in 50,000, excuse me, was it 10 years? Yeah, 10 years, $50,000 of her own money. But because she started so much sooner, it was allowed to grow longer. So that's why the earlier you start, the better. So there's all these, phrases and sayings. So there is that saying, the best time to invest was yesterday. The next best time is today, right now. How many of you have heard of Warren Buffett? The Wizard of Omaha, right? Greatest investor in the world. Okay, great. So he has said many, many times, the greatest superpower you can have as an investor, time. Time. Okay? Time will help you immensely. So let's make sure we're clear on what's happening here. Investor one put in far less money and made more profit, right? Profit means, what do I get above what I put in? Okay, $720,000 of profit versus investor two put in, $150,000 of his own money. So not only did he not make as much, he made less profit. That's the power of time, okay? That's the power of time. Another way to think about this, in terms of this scenario, if you waited 10 years, if you were this guy, investor two, it cost you $90,000. That's the difference, okay? $90,000. That's a down payment. Could be a down payment on a house. So, how do we do this? It is not too late, it is not too early, I should say, for you folks to be thinking about this. I wish somebody was telling me about this stuff when I was your age. So, here is what retirement planning looks like for you folks. Thankfully, it's relatively simple for now. The second you have the opportunity to enroll in a company retirement plan, normally if it's a private company, it's a 401k. If it's like a nonprofit or a government organization, it's a 403b. But these are company-sponsored retirement plans. They are benefits for you folks. They're a benefit. So use it, okay? This is what I want you to do. You don't have to put in a ton right now, but put in, meaning contribute, up to the employer match. What is that? That's free money. So what that means is normally, the company will match you up to 3%, meaning they'll give you 3% free money. Okay? So at the very least, give up to whatever the match is. You are literally leaving money on the table, which could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? If you think about when you retire, please, you sign up, you enroll, get the match, okay? Get the match. You are leaving money, and that's your money you earned. Here's the other important part. You do these three things, you're like 80% of the way there for retirement planning, okay? So what I want you to think about is regularly, maybe every 5 years, or maybe every time you get a raise, increase the amount you contribute, okay? What you don't want to do, set the contribution amount when you first joined the company when you were, let's say, 28, and you don't change it until you retire at 65. You didn't maximize your opportunity, right? You're getting all these raises, and that was an opportunity to put more money into your retirement. So raise the amount you contribute as well. Okay, where to start? So automate, right? The nice thing about company retirement plans, they do it for you. Once you enroll, it's all done in the back, behind the scenes, okay? It's all done behind the scenes, so you don't have to worry about that. But think simple. Sometimes you're not sure what to invest in, and a lot of the times, there's nobody telling you what to put it in. Like they don't actually have an advisor that can actually tell you specifically what to put it in. So focus on what they call target date or life cycle funds. These are funds that, they look like you just have one investment. So what you do is you figure out what year am I going to retire. So let's say if you're 20 years old, you're going to retire at 65. What is that? 40, 20, 60, 65, 66. 20, let's say it's 2065, because they normally do every 5 years. So you choose the target date fund that says 2065. That means they're assuming you're going to retire around that time. So what's happening is, under the hood of this investment, the composition of all of the investments, it's a fully diversified investment under the hood, meaning you get a little bit of everything in an appropriate allocation. It's changing as you get older, meaning it's getting more conservative as you get to the point when you retire. And normally what happens is once you retire, it starts to be more income driven. And you don't have to do anything. It's doing all of that behind the scenes, okay? So now you don't have to be like, oh, I gotta get this, and I gotta use S&P 500, and I gotta get an international, I gotta get some bonds. Just get a lifestyle fund or target date fund. Keep it nice and simple. Pay attention to fees, okay? Fees, fees, fees. So that's called an expense ratio, These are a little more expensive than just a regular ETF, like if you invested in the S&P 500, but it's not that much more expensive. I feel it is worth paying for, because it's not expensive considering what you get for it. Okay, wait, why is oh, there we go, okay. Remember, boring is good. Boring is good. I know a lot of you are on TikTok. TikTok is a wasteland for finance, okay? No crypto. No crypto unless you want to gamble. It's not investing, it's gambling. I'm telling you. I have a PhD in finance. It makes me confused when I study this crypto. If you don't understand it, it's just gambling, okay? So just be aware of that. That's not investing. Remember, investing should be boring. Investing should be boring. There's a question in the back?
Well, what about like investing in stocks then? That's kind of like gambling, right?
It could be, right? But with stocks, there's an actual way of saying, I am an owner in a company, right? And in theory, they all have to give you the financials. That's publicly traded information. You can literally look at the financials and say, oh, that's how they make money. How the hell do you know what a crypto is making money? I don't. Again, I'm not an idiot. I literally have a piece of paper that says I'm an expert in this. And I'm like, okay. Okay, so avoid new products or services. Tried and true is best. Here's the other thing. So about crypto is the one that, if everybody's talking about crypto, don't do crypto. A couple years ago, everybody's talking about NFTs. About 10 years ago, it was cannabis stocks. Okay, so here's the way that I think about it. If your 60-year-old auntie who knows you're in business school or knows that you like this kind of stuff goes, what do you think about blah, blah, blah? Do not ever buy that thing, whatever that thing is, okay? Because it's too saturated, there's too much emotion, too much volatility. So you wanna just set it and forget it. You don't wanna keep looking at this thing every single time, because this is a retirement account. You're not gonna touch this thing for decades, okay? You could really stress yourself out if you keep looking at it. Having said that, on TikTok, I do like, what's her name, Vivian too, your rich BFF. She's pretty good. And Ramit Sethi is good. If there's any kind of flashy sports car in any of those videos from TikTok for finance, don't do it. Okay, so in terms of action items, I know most of you are not in your career yet, Roth. A Roth is an individual retirement account. You control it. It's not tied to any company. I like a Roth versus a traditional IRA because For a Roth, how this works is you pay taxes now, you put the money in after you pay taxes, it grows tax-free, and then when I need it when I'm retired, I don't pay any taxes, none. That is different than a traditional IRA where right now I put the money in pre-tax, it grows tax-free, but then when I take the money out, I have to pay income taxes. And for those of you who maybe are aware of this, I have to pay it at my income tax bracket. I don't get capital gains benefits. So it can be expensive. And you want to think about it this way. Has the United States government ever decreased taxes? No. So to me, a Roth is a better chance. You can still automate those contributions. You just want to be aware of the limits, right? We have some annual limits for contributions. You can find that on the irs.gov website. Now, if you don't receive a paycheck, because a Roth, you do need to have to be employed, you can just invest in a taxable investment account, okay? Taxable investment account. Just want to get started. Okay, so last action break. Here we go. So, if you have an investment account, or you have a company you work with, just see. You don't have to open it right now. See what the process is to open or to establish a Roth, okay? Or at the very least, find the website and bookmark it, okay? In terms of if you don't have any kind of investment account, my suggestion, even though this is not necessarily individual investment advice because I don't know you, your personal financial plans, but Vanguard or Schwab can't go wrong, okay? Vanguard or Schwab. So let's do this for about 5 minutes. If anybody has questions, but jump on your phone, just check it out, just see. What does it take to get a Roth? Like if you have a service provider you use already. And while we're doing that, I can answer any questions or if anybody needs clarification.
I did have a question on like the company retirement ones. So say you work at a company for 5 years, you move to another company for 15 years, and then you've been investing in the 401k. Do they just give you the money afterwards, or how does that work?
Yeah, very good question. So the question was, okay, well, what if I work at this company for 5 years and I leave? Okay, so normally there's what's called a vesting schedule. They have to give that to you. And so what happens is, for every year you work, you take ownership of more and more and more of their money. You always have your money, but their contributions, if you're doing the match, you will get more and more ownership of that contribution as every year goes by. And I think normally it's a 5 or 7 year vesting schedule, meaning, let's say it was 5 years. After 5 years, you can walk away, you get all of it. Yeah, because that's just their way to make you stay, yeah. But after that, it's portable, you can take it. Yeah, good question.
What do you think is an ideal percentage in terms of an employer match? Like 3%, 7%?
Oh, okay, good percentage. I think most companies will do 3. Yeah, I would say most do 3%, yeah.
Going off of that, how exactly does the matching work? Is it like 3% of however much you put in? Or?
Yeah, so like if you did 10% of your paycheck, they'll just match the first 3%. Yeah.
Okay. There's no like limit percent?
Well, there's no, technically there is a limit for how much you can contribute. It's, I think it's like $16,000 a year. It's a fairly high amount. So there is a money limit, but that's technically the limit, I would say, yeah. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
So initially, my idea of investment was like putting money into stocks and things like that. After learning about this, I'm not sure like what the difference is. So like, could you clarify exactly like this? Because I have a so-called account where I do stock investment, but then it's like I've never heard of these things before. So
yeah, so it's different in the sense that it's just a different bucket is one way to think about it. You have a taxable account. I think that's probably what you have. It's just a bucket that's holding the investments. This is just a different bucket that you can't touch till you retire. Okay, so, but in your case, let me just talk real quickly about stocks, individual stocks. If you love investigating, researching stocks, if you love that, go for it. I will tell you, based on the research, you don't get any extra performance from choosing individual stocks versus an ETF that just broadly exposes yourself to the market. There's a ton of research that just shows there's no outperformance. Okay, so you don't have to choose individual stocks if you don't want to. Just stick with a target date fund or index funds, which give you just broad exposure for really, really cheap. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
How do you feel about options trading?
Okay, options trading. Okay, so options can be very, very aggressive, but they can be quite safe. Having said that, you need to babysit these investments pretty regularly, okay? And they move quickly. They do move very, very quickly, so they're not for the faint of heart. Again, if you really like it, great. I've dabbled in it, but I don't do options myself very regularly. And it just depends. It depends on what your strategy is. Some are super conservative, some are like nuclear, deadly, yeah. Yes? Can you open multiple Roths? Ooh, good question. I believe you can, but you want to make sure you're careful about that annual contribution limit. That's a hard limit, no matter how many different accounts you have. I believe you can open several Roths. So I believe it's like, what is it, like $5,000, I think, per year?
7,500.
What was it?
7,000 right now.
7,000, okay, yeah. So between all of them, that's the hard limit, yeah. Okay, so let me just wrap up here. I am the faculty advisor for this new initiative. So there is a local company called 3D Wealth. They donated to Shidler a ton of money. Their passion is financial literacy. They want every single UH student to have financial literacy. With that generous donation, we have a license with a platform called iGrad. It's an online platform. That is our branded personal website. If you have a UH login, you have free access to that. That thing is killer. It'll do tons of stuff, okay? Tons of stuff. Not just what we talked about, okay? It is an immense benefit. And I can't thank 3D Wealth advisors enough for what they're doing for our community, okay? So I'm in the process, of getting this going in the sense of getting an ambassador. I still haven't done that yet, a student ambassador. But in the meantime, please sign up, check it out. It normally would cost a lot of money to have access to this website, and we're getting it for free. Please do me a favor. You don't have to text them or email them, but think about 3 people who are classmates, friends at UH who could benefit from this. Just make sure you tell them. Just tell 3 people. I want to get the word out about this, okay? And it's not, even if it's people outside of your school, right? We want to get the word out. Even though it's branded with Shidler, this is for any student, okay? Eventually, the donors want to spread this to every single campus, every community college, UH Hilo, West Oahu, all of them. So that's a QR code. And that is the email address if you want to shoot an email to us. Okay, so let's just do a quick summary here. Any action is better than none, okay? Any amount of money is better than none. $1 is better than 0, okay? Open that savings account if you haven't. If you can, open that Roth account. Automate everything so you don't have to think about it. You just set it and forget it. And if you have credit card balances, start chipping away at it. So that is it for today. If you have any questions, you can always just shoot me an email. But thank you, gang.